Hello, and welcome to another episode of David's Divergent Discussions. My name's David Gray Hammond, and I will be your host for this evening. With me is Katie Monday and Priscilla Isles, and we will be talking about Spectrum 10K, which a lot of people have probably heard of, but I'm still coming across people who haven't heard of it. So we will go over what it is. We won't just jump straight in where it's at now. Before we start, we're going to do some brief audio descriptions. So, my name's David Gray Hammond. I am a mid-30s white Mediterranean male wearing thick-rimmed purpley grey glasses. I have a shaved head, a short beard, a lip piercing, and an ear tunnel. I'm sat in a very blue room wearing a green and grey stripy t-shirt. Katie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Katie Monday. I use they, them pronouns. I'm also known as Autistic and Living the Dream online. I do everything consultancy, training, youth work, wheelchair basketball. I do lots of different things. A lot of my research at the moment is on cancer services, accessibility, and kind of stuff like that as well. I am a large white person with short dark hair that I will play with a lot throughout this. I've got large brown and orange glasses, an eyebrow bar in my left eyebrow. I'm just going to explain my jumper because someone asked me if it was a Hufflepuff jumper the other day. I just want to explain that I do not endorse Harry Potter in any way, shape, or form. So this is actually a Tigers wheelchair basketball hoodie. So they're a
Much
wheelchair
cool.
basketball team that was in Brighton, and someone was like, "Oh, is that Hufflepuff?" And I was like, "Oh, no, it's really just fucking not." And I'm sat in my usual front room. It's kind of gloomy-ish. I don't know, in front of green curtains. Yeah, so that's me.
And Priscilla.
Hi, my name is Priscilla, and my pronouns. Well, I prefer to be called by my name, but other pronouns are she, they. And what I do, well, like everyone else, I do a lot of different things. I do mostly sort of Jedi Justice, Equity, Diversion, Inclusion training, specialising in neurodiversity workplace from an intersectional perspective. And I also do what else I do? Life modelling, cat sitting, um, keynote talking, cult awareness advocacy stuff around like neurodivergence, particularly, and multiply marginalised cult survivor experience. So yeah, that's my main things. And to start myself, I've got short, dark brown, curly hair, which needs to be cut again. And I also have glasses, full house of glasses today. It's like gold, but fading to silver because I've had these for so long on the bridge. A tortoiseshell ace and tape glasses, and what else? I've got my wireless Jaybird headphones in at the moment, and I've got like multiple ear piercings in my everywhere. I my conch and my college, and I'm wearing a sort of, I don't know, what would you describe this as? It's like a kind of Norwegian folk pattern, but I don't know if that's right. It's like a cardigan with brown buttons and like dark green. And oh my David Bowie t-shirt with my it's like one of my favorite t-shirts. My low t-shirt. Can't even see it. Can you? It's fading. And I'm just in my living room with my divider kind of half there, and just like piles of books next to me and a really packed bookshelf. It's probably gonna like collapse with books at some point. Yeah.
Okay, so we are here to talk about Spectrum 10K, and anyone who's sort of, got an awareness of Spectrum 10K will probably remember when this was first announced. It caused a lot of upset. It was not popular in the autistic community for reasons we will get into. And so some of us, including the three of us here, I believe, formed a boycott Spectrum 10K team. And as you will find out, the study was paused for a while. Unfortunately, it's now started back up, and we'll get into that more. But I thought, to begin with, Katie, would you like to just take us through what Spectrum 10K is and kind of bring people up to speed a bit?
Yeah, so in August
Oh,
2021.
sorry, before we continue, there's a bit of background noise with someone, like a TV or something I can hear. Oh, it's stopped now. Anyway, carry on, Katie.
Yeah, so in August 2021, the University of Cambridge, with funding from the Wellcome Trust, announced their biggest project to date. It's I think is about £3 million. I think on quite a large project on basically collecting 10,000 autistic people's medical histories, samples of their DNA through saliva, and also doing a questionnaire with people as well. Which obviously, if that doesn't sound horrifying enough by itself, it was made a bit more worrying about the people who were behind it, including Simon Baron-Cohen, who has had, although is knighted for his work with autistic people and families and people who support us, has done some actual quite harmful stuff to the autistic community and the autism community in general, around ideas of us being having low empathy or no empathy whatsoever, which is also called low theory of mind, extreme male brain theory, where there's this idea around us having, all of us, no matter gender, sex, whatever, all of us having too much testosterone in utero, testosterone levels. You can also see how that's quite worrying for those of us who are trans and gender diverse as well, which I am. So that's like major red flags to me. Also, a few other people who are involved in the project. I want to do an overview. I don't want to deep dive into it too much, but there's a lot around, curing autism, the idea of, can we do prenatal testing for autism? And all of these people funded by the likes of kind of Autism Speaks and Autistica, which is basically the UK version of Autism Speaks. So there's a lot of kind of worrying elements to it. And just in general, like the aims of it were very unclear. The ethics of it was exceedingly questionable. I know their first run through of the ethics was actually denied anyways. So yeah, there's like red flag, all the red flags. So yeah, and sprung from that, boycott Spectrum 10K, yeah, which paused it for, so it started in August. I believed it got paused from October to January,
something like that.
Whilst basically ethical approval was redone. I think it might have been 5 months that it was. Come on, brain. September to January, I think that's a thing. And then basically they said, oh, okay, so now the team said, so the research team said, with everyone's concerns and all of that, and most people are into this kind of our project, but some people have raised concerns, so we're going to pause it. Okay, well, actually, you have no power in being able to pause that or not, because if it's an ethical thing, the ethics committee will pause it. So you haven't, out of the goodness of your heart or caring about what autistic people have to say, you personally, Simon Baron-Cohen, whoever else, have not paused this. It has been paused by the ethics committee to have another look at everything that was written there. Again, I don't want to go into too much details, but things were picked out from there as well, which we're probably going to talk about. I've written a lot of notes because I'm not particularly brilliant with my memory, so I've written quite a lot of notes on that as well. Then it was reinstated in early 2022, and they thought, we'll actually do consultation with autistic people. Who knew? They'd done some small consultation before the start of the project with mostly non-autistic parents of autistic young people and children. And then they've finally decided that actually consultancy with autistic people might actually be quite helpful. And they have finished that. I believe that finished in September, October this year. So they've had a long old year of consultancy, and that consultancy apparently is going to carry on throughout analysis and whatever else comes from this as well. So it was supposed to be a 2-year long gathering of information, so the 10,000 people's worth of information. And then they were going to go into analysis. Obviously, it was stopped for 5 months. So I'm assuming that the collection of data stops in January next year. So January 2024. That is an assumption from me, but I'm just going to stick 5 months on it and think, yeah, that probably makes sense.
Well, thank you for bringing people up to speed. As always, if you have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. Like the first thing that stood out to me, obviously, and you said this, the people behind the study, because it wasn't just Simon Baron-Cohen, I believe it was Daniel Gershwind, something like that, who, when you look at his history, he was involved with groups that wanted to cure autism, which is like so many red flags. It's like a colour parade has come to town.
Autism Speaks, isn't it?
There was that. There was also something like Cure Autism Now or Take Action.
That was his actual name.
Yeah.
God.
Cure Autism Now. It wasn't
like
even
literally
like
had the word cure.
Jesus, that's what it says on the tin.
Like,
He's not trying to hide it, I guess.
And I remember when we all raised concerns about that, they went, "Oh yeah, but he's not with them now." It's like, yeah, but he was with them, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
But he's not a Nazi now.
Yeah.
Like he used to be a fascist, but now he's not.
Don't get me wrong, I believe in reforming yourself and rehabilitation, but when you've gone from that to this study, I have concerns.
Was it soon after as well that he left from that?
I don't think it was long after. It had only been a few years.
Because that's also, for me, it's kind of suspicious that, like, oh, maybe I should leave this before I take on this study.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then
damage control.
Yeah, and then of course they go, well, we're doing it because we want to help autistic people with their comorbidities, and it's like, well, firstly, you called them comorbidities.
Yeah, so that's the first red flag. It's the first mistake.
Right.
One of many.
And then it's like, well, okay, but you still want 10,000 autistic people's DNA, and you yourself, they were quoted as saying, we're not going to use it for eugenics, but we can't guarantee the people who come after us won't. Well, we're not going to give you our DNA then.
And then they call us like, oh, we're just sort of a fringe extremist group or something.
Yeah.
With our silly concerns.
I don't.
And the thing is, like, I think, my timing is not going to be brilliant with this, but it wasn't that many months after they said, yeah, we're not going to use this for eugenics, that the Autism Research Centre at the University of Cambridge was like, oh yeah, we're starting this amniocentesis study, and we're going to be doing focus groups on the pros and cons of being able to tell whether your fetus is autistic or not.
And I feel like we need
to... Doesn't sound eugenic at all.
Yeah, we need to explain this a bit, though, because maybe not everyone knows what amniocentesis is. I assume a lot of women who've been pregnant probably do know what amniocentesis is, because they already push it for things like Down syndrome. But essentially, amniocentesis is in utero testing to see if your child is likely to be born with certain conditions. And the problem autistic people have with this in the field of autism is that you are then given the option to terminate the pregnancy if they have these conditions. So what we're potentially seeing is testing being developed to abort potentially autistic children to prevent them being born. Now, I mean, I'm pro-choice, but I am also pro-not eugenics. And I remember I did an interview actually for a biotech publication where they spent the whole time during that interview going like, well, if you're pro-choice, you can't be against it. I'm like, yeah, I can have ethics. And their whole focus was like, well, they're hypocrites because they're pro-choice, but they don't agree with amniocentesis. And I'm like, no, what I don't agree with is just arbitrarily removing people from the gene pool. Like, that is eugenics.
Yeah.
And this is where the problem is. So they've got Spectrum 10K, which is definitely not eugenics. See the quote marks there. And then out of nowhere, an amniocentesis study that has the potential to lead to eugenics. I want to say, you know, I could paint this clearer, but I feel like it's about as clear as it gets at this point. Does anyone else have thoughts on the amniocentesis study? Because some people are saying, oh, you know, it's unrelated. You know, you're worrying over nothing. I'd like to see what other people's thoughts on that are.
I think. Can I add what Alice has written
let me
here?
throw it up on the screen.
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, so Alice has shared, and when a condition is identified, the termination term gets higher. So you can terminate a lot later than if no condition is identified. Which, yeah, and like worryingly late as well, as far as I'm concerned. As a human being who has given birth to another human being, like that for me is this sounds really silly. It's not just putting the baby at risk, because obviously that's all part of it anyways, but it's also putting the birthing parent
say that
at
sounds
risk
really
as well.
risky.
Yeah, so you know, we've set the scene anyway. We've got this study that wants DNA off of autistic people, that whilst it's looking at comorbidities, they've admitted it will also look at genetic factors behind autism itself. That was admitted. They then also now had this amniocentesis study come out. We've had this pause because of ethics, where they've said, well, we'll consult with the autistic community. And everyone's going, oh, well, if you're going to ask them before you wipe them out, that's fine. So it's more complicated than that, though, isn't it? Because there's this culture around autism in particular, I find, where people become, in my opinion, people become really heavily focused on whether we are a burden to society, whether we are a burden.
Economic costs and all that.
The economic cost. Like, I've literally seen research into the economic cost of autistic people. I don't see research into the economic cost of neurotypical people, but they're doing their bullshit as well. So
yeah, slowing down things with bureaucracy, that must cost a load of money. Come on.
Yeah. So, you know, I'm beyond the obvious things. You know, what were some of the concerns that you two had about this? You know, what does this say to you about the current state of being autistic?
Oh, sorry, Priscilla, I'll let you go first.
Well, for me, like, it just shows that the priorities with the research, you know, the sort of research community who are not, you know, using lived experience, who are not autistic researchers, consulting with the community and active in the community, people like Simon Baron-Cohen, I just feel like they are such a cliche of the academic in their sort of castle, right? and just totally disconnected from the realities of what autistic people actually need and want. And for me, like, I see this study and I see the money spent on it, and I see, like, well, like, how much money could a Black autistic researcher get? How much funding could they get to, you know, actually look at how can we improve multiple marginalized people's lives, and look at the cost of discrimination on people, and, like, you know, how can we actually get beyond these ideas of just legal frameworks to actually, like, improve our lives? Because I don't see how this is going to help us in any way. It's going to be worse, like you say. It's going to be more like eugenics. So that really angers me, because I just feel like there's so much there which could be studied instead, in terms of, like, you know, just in the workplace, like the amount of abuse that goes on in the workplace, you know, amount of abuse that goes on in, you know, I do cult stuff, so, like, amount of neurodivergent people in cults, like, you know, there's so much there, like, that could be studied, and they're choosing this ridiculous thing which is just, you know, it's harmful and horrible. And it's obvious that it wasn't, there wasn't any consultation with autistic people from the start.
Yeah, I think when you have a look at what happened through COVID-19, and I'm not talking about it as if it doesn't currently exist, but like during the kind of big waves of it a couple of years ago, and autistic people, as well as learning disabled and physically disabled people and various other people from the disability community, were just had DNRs, like, do not resuscitate. Like, if we go down, this is like, that's it. Don't bother about us. And then people have the gall to say that we are somehow being paranoid, hysterical. That's a favorite of mine, because not only is it ableistic, it's also misogynistic. Yay! To say, well, you kind of like, when you're reading into that a little bit,
Gaslighting, so
really,
gaslighting.
like, yeah. So not only are you going to do something that is, in the best case scenario, is well-meaning people doing something that is a waste of however many millions of pounds, that isn't actually going to benefit the autistic community. And at the very worst case scenario is complete fascists harvesting our DNA, which is not just the 10,000 people here, but also this is adding to the, I believe there was a Canada 5K. It's going to be added to various other things that have been collected in Europe as well. So there's going to be upward of like 100,000 autistic people's DNA samples, surveys, complete medical histories. Like, something's going
And
wrong.
let's talk about that for a second, because I think this is definitely relevant to multiply marginalized communities. They talk about the anonymity of the data. It's DNA. Like, you can't fully anonymize DNA because it is specific to a person.
Yeah, it's like a fingerprint, right? And like, it's just, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
Like this, when we think about marginalized communities and the fact that governments already like to intrude upon their daily lives at any given opportunity, it seems like a huge ethical red flag when we're asking people to literally hand over the most unique thing about them. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And
I don't know, it just, like, I think about, for example, when you're approaching research like this, you've got the work of Nick Chown and what constitutes good autism research and good autism theory. And sort of two of the principles I draw from that is, first of all, it should benefit the community. All right, well, let's think about Spectrum 10K. On the surface, what they said they were going to do is look at genetic factors in comorbid conditions, or co-occurring conditions, as I would prefer to call them. And on the surface, questionable anyway as to whether that's actually going to benefit the autistic community, because we already have the co-occurring conditions. So maybe look at ways you can improve our quality of life whilst living with those co-occurring conditions. I don't particularly care about why it's happened. I care about what is happening right now. But then that's just the surface level, because the next point is that good autism theory, good autism research should not harm the community. Spectrum 10K has so much potential to harm not just the autistic community, but all of the intersecting communities that overlap with it as well. Like, in my opinion, on those two principles, it fails both. So
miserably.
why is this getting £3 million of funding whilst you've got really good research? I think of researchers like Damien Milton, Luke Bearden, Stephen.
Monique.
You've got some fantastic researchers out there who are really getting quite well known for their research, who can only dream of someone giving them £3 million to improve autism quality of life.
Exactly.
Like, there are so many good researchers out there from all kind of walks of life who are doing meaningful research, who just are not getting the funding that is going to make the same impact that something like Spectrum 10K is going to have. And the ultimate impact of Spectrum 10K is potentially harmful.
I mean, we've already seen how people like Simon Baron Cohen have harmed us with their diagnostic criterias, you know. Like it prevents multiply marginalized people from, like me and AFABs and females, from getting the diagnosis that they need at the earliest stage that they can get it. We've seen that in so many instances, because the criteria is for white boys basically, and was probably tested on white boys.
Specifically, little white boys who have been horrifically traumatized by neurotypical society as well.
And this extreme male brain theory. So, like, how on earth could we trust someone like that anyway, with all they've done already, and the so obvious pandering to a more sort of, I don't know, activist community by saying, "Oh, look, I've done this trans study." You know, and it's like, no, mate, I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it.
And for anyone who thinks that they've moved beyond the old theories of things like extreme male brain theory, correct me if I'm wrong, Katie, the amniocentesis study also wanted to look at hormone levels.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
it's
right.
obvious they're trying to bolster that theory. Like, you know, this group of, you know, these old school researchers who are still somehow at the top of their field, although arguably shouldn't be.
They're just making stuff up. Sorry, I just like
it kind of feels like they are, because
it's making stuff up.
Yeah.
Oh, it's good paper done.
And actually, another comment from Alice Gardner here: 3 million to carry on feeding into the negative narrative. And this is it exactly. You know, this is £3 million to avoid giving autistic people a voice on their own fate.
I'll also say about the co-occurring things as well. So I believe it was Liam O'Dell, who's another autistic and deaf advocate, who got the minutes of the meeting of the London Queen Square Research Ethics Committee. There we are. I had to write that down. For a Freedom of Information Act. I don't know. Something happened, but they used Freedom of Information to get the minutes for this. Really interesting reading. And on page 11, it actually says, so they're so worried about co-occurring. You know, a lot of autistic people are also epileptic. You know, we need to have a look at the causes of this. Okay, that sounds lovely. If we find anything in their genetics that says that they have another condition, we are not going to tell them.
Well, that's extremely unethical.
Right. And so how does this benefit?
So what is the current what?
So not even
the more you read into it, the more you look at it, you just think,
why though?
For our DNA, are they? They're refusing to tell us what they find in it.
But why? That's so weird. Why are they refusing? Do they even give a reason? Just because?
I've not written that down, and I read it quite a while ago.
That's ridiculous.
But yeah, presumably because it's been anonymized, and like, who would they tell anyways? And I don't know, but just how weird to do, like, basically genomic.
They've got loads of money.
Research,
they could trace
this 100% is. And to talk about co-occurring conditions so much. It was the thing that Simon Baron-Cohen brought up all of the time. He was talking about epilepsy all the time, which is not a problem, but it made it sound like an epilepsy study. Okay, brilliant. Then spend £3 million on an epilepsy study. Please. My goodness, please do that. That would be amazingly beneficial to so many people. And then just go, well, if it was occurring stuff, then
I mean, did they even give us any sort of sense of like, oh, well, this is the rates of epilepsy and autism in the community, and this is why we want to get this number? Because, like, I bet you that doesn't add up with the number they want, and then, you know, what they're saying it's for, right? It's like, I'm not sure that maths doesn't.
They couldn't decide.
But could you imagine?
They couldn't decide the aims, and then what happened when they so there was the pause, and then obviously the ethics committee had to reconsider everything that was given to them, and then the kind of goalposts moved, so the aims of the study kind of changed, and then all of a sudden they're talking about well-being, autistic well-being. They spoke about all the time. They didn't give us any parameters on what well-being looks like.
Sounds like a cult.
And how that might be different.
we did well-being
exactly.
with this weekend course.
and what that might look like for non-speaking people, or people in our community who are people of color, who are also physically disabled. Like there was none of that. And then obviously our favorite comorbid conditions, genetic factors of autism was finally put in there, because they were like, yeah, they're kind of onto us with this, we're gonna have to put it down. And then also COVID-19 effects, apparently that's also another aim.
COVID-19 effects, was it?
For autistic people in our families, apparently that's another thing they need to know. I can't remember if that's like, if you've had COVID-19, what that means for your mental and physical health, or like the lockdowns, because this is obviously UK based research. So
I know.
but the aims are wishy-washy, and then they fly around all over the place and they keep changing, and I'm just like,
I know we were in lockdown for a while, but I'm fairly certain our genetics didn't change whilst we were in lockdown. You have to isolate a group for like millions of years before they turn into another species.
I mean, it sounds like it's like an anti-vaxxer conspiracy theory. Did you know that the COVID vaccine changes your genes? Don't take it.
Yeah, but 100%. Like, it does.
If this study comes to the conclusion that COVID-19 gives you autism, I'm getting all the vaccines, because I'm just going to level up. I'll be like an autistic dog. No, but the point, the thing is, okay. Like one of the points I want to make, right? When the study was paused, the boycott team, we played a fairly big role in that, and like people were like, "Oh, you're anti-science." So I'm going to break this down. The boycott team consisted of autistic advocates and activists, autistic academics who are very much involved with and enjoy science. We had writers. We had there was autistic people from all walks of life, including the sciences. It wasn't like we wrote one angry letter and got it paused. It was like you can find it on my website, actually. It equated something like a 32-page document that was well cited and referenced, that contained every single concern we had. And you should understand, there were a lot of concerns. You don't get a 32-page document from just like 2 or 3 concerns, And the Health Research Authority decided, on the weight of that document and the outcry of other autistic people, to pause the study and reevaluate the ethics. The bit that really hacked me off was that all they had to do was go, yeah, we'll talk to autistic people first. And they went, oh, yeah, that's fine. No, it's not.
Oh, can I add another layer onto that? The consultancy. Now they were going to consult us. Amazing. Like, oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. But also the people who were being consulted at the time were being paid to gather information like that 32-page document that we all spent time, money, energy, spoons
doing for free,
and then
right?
just
and not getting paid for that. Yeah,
100%. That was free of our own back.
Love for the community.
But we're going to pay people to gather in all that information, all your tweets, all your emails, all your, whatever else. And we were going to pay someone, presumably who's non-autistic, but quite frankly, it doesn't bloody matter, to gather in all that information that you've created for free. And then we're going to do nothing with that information.
Wasting money
and
again.
We're still going to talk about it as if it's a very small, niche, hysterical, uneducated.
I'd like to say something about that
group
as
of
well.
people. I'm not talking about uneducated. That would be their. I don't think there's too much of a hierarchy in education and knowledge, and it's not really my kind of thing. But that would be their for instance of things. It's just that we're fringe, basically twits who don't know what we're talking about.
Priscilla, did you have something to
add? No, it's just so the way that we're framed in the media has been absolutely appalling. The amount of the coverage that I've heard, like there was a Times podcast interview with Holly Smale, and I think it was David Aronovich, or I think he was hosting, but he was just so rude and so horrible, and he was basically coming at it from this, why are you so concerned? What's your point? What, like, you know, like it was that kind of attacking sort of interview style. And Holly, you know, she said it on Twitter, so I don't think she mind me saying this. She said she cried afterwards. But so this is how the media treats us. They just come at it from already the position that what we have to say, oh, we're just going to diminish and gaslight that because it's not really a real concern. It's just, like you say, we're just being hysterical. We're just, you know, too sensitive or something. We just don't understand how science works, whatever it is. But like that really affects then how people see the study. If that's how, and you know, and if they're only putting the sound bites or the pieces of information that they want to use in their piece, which may be a little paragraph, maybe from Chloe Farah, for example, and then a whole long bit from the other side. Oh, that's balanced though, because we've got a little paragraph from my autistic person.
Yeah.
So, you know, that infuriates me.
This actually adds on to what I wanted to add, which is they've whipped up this media frenzy around how we're, you know, anti-science and we're just fringe extremists. And, you know, so the autistic community is really upset, really hurt, potentially feeling almost volatile at points. And then Spectrum 10K employed other autistic people to do consultations. To me, that seems like they're trying to encourage some kind of lateral violence.
Yeah, divide and conquer, really, right? Divide and conquer.
You know, it's, you know, it's not okay to do that. You know,
and then employing people like Chris Packham and Cary Grant and all these people for celebrity ambassadors.
For that point, has anyone else noticed that their celebrity ambassadors have not mentioned Spectrum 10K in a
I was going to ask that because, like, I don't know if they're still their ambassadors.
Can I read something out that I found earlier?
Yeah.
Because I went, ooh, that's interesting. I'll take a screenshot of that. Right. So for those who don't know, there were several mostly celebrity ambassadors who were people who were like, oh yeah, Spectrum 10K, let's have it. Paddy McGuinness, who I would assume is neurodivergent, but I don't know if he's out in his neurodivergence, but is a parent to autistic children.
Autistic, yeah.
Oh, okay. And obviously I know his ex-wife is as well. Cary Grant, what's her husband
David
called?
Grant, I think.
But they've got David. So they've got autistic children as well.
And trans children as
Chris
well.
Packham was another one. Yeah, and then another woman who I'd never heard of before and was absolutely horrendous on Twitter, but we can get onto that in a minute. Oh no, let's get onto it now. Why not? So the woman who I'd never heard of before, whose name still escapes me now.
Let's just call her Turf.
Turf, yeah, was absolutely horrendous. Like, when it all went live, oh, lovely jubbly, and these are our ambassadors. I think a lot of us were shocked by Chris Packham. I
was disappointed.
I will add, for balance, Chris Packham has done some good stuff since then.
Yeah.
So what I was just about to say is, I don't know if we gently educated Chris. Some of us more gentle than others, but I think he just kind of backed off. He backed all the way off as far as I was aware, because I just think, which speaks to me of a miscommunication between what he's been told by his 10K and then the actual reality of things, which again, another red flag. And there was this other woman who I know a lot of people were getting in contact with through Twitter. And then she just kind of went off on one. She just went on this ableist, transphobic rant at pretty much everyone who commented any kind of criticism.
I think she managed to sort of capture most of the forms of bigotry in the space.
Literally, yeah, she was definitely racist. There was definitely misogyny in there. It was just probably anti-Semitism. Why not?
Let's put it
in the thing. Like, she literally lost the plot. So like,
I want to read
so
that again.
anyways, so I was thinking about her earlier today, and this is what it says on the Spectrum 10K website now. Spectrum 10K ambassadors. While we are very grateful to our ambassadors for the support they have provided, we have decided to end this role.
They decided,
The
did
reason
they?
for this Oh, yeah. The reason for this is that it will be impossible to keep ambassadors up to date as the consultation progresses because things can
What?
change very quickly.
What?
This risk.
That makes
Hang on, whoa. Hang on. This risks placing ambassadors in a situation where they are asked questions that they cannot answer. Simply because we have not had time to bring them up to date. We want to avoid any risk of public confusion about the project and focus entirely on the consultation.
Oh my
So there we are. That's what's
God.
happened to your,
Do they
to
think
your
we're just
ambassadors.
like completely ignorant? What the hell?
When actually just one of them just went on
Like they literally hired a
Messenger
fascist.
exists. What?
They literally hired a fascist and they won't even admit it. Like,
Of course they won't. I mean, Simon Baron-Cohen's probably a fascist
Yeah.
and he won't admit.
well, yeah. So that was all just very interesting. But I literally didn't know that until earlier today, and I thought, oh, that's really just interesting. Isn't that interesting? But again, it's their
Yeah,
decision.
it's like it was their decision to pause it.
You know,
Yeah, I
our
believe
decision
that.
to pause
By
the thing.
that.
We're totally in control of what's going on here. You know, we're not. You know, we know what we're doing.
Just that whole thing of like, oh, they wouldn't be able to answer questions. Yeah, because you're not giving them the right information in the first place. It's nothing to do with the speed of communication.
Yes, email, brilliant. WhatsApp.
I remember
Yeah,
them using
quite
a
good.
similar. They wouldn't be able to answer questions to justify. What was it? Because originally they were gonna. There was the potential for them to take DNA off people with higher support needs. And that was one of the questions raised. And they were like, "Oh well, you know, we haven't put information out about this because they wouldn't be able to understand it or something." And I remember this. There was something to do with higher support needs, and they were saying, you know, well, we don't need to ask their permission because they wouldn't understand anyway.
What, the people with higher support needs?
Yeah, they were like, we can just ask their parents. It was like that.
Well,
they
that
still have
explains
rights.
that crap easy read consent form as well.
I'm sure I remember this being a point of discussion way back when, like 2 years ago or something.
It was.
Oh,
I've
good.
written it down. So going back to the really long ethics committee minutes, right?
I need to read these minutes as well now. Are they free? Are they available?
Yes. Liam O'Dell would be the person you would need to. I have a feeling he's put it up on his website for you to have a look at. If not, I'm sure if you got in contact with him, I'm hoping that's correct, Liam. Sorry. If not, we'll find a way to get
I think
it
people should
and pop
see
it on
this,
this video
really.
somewhere, I'm sure. Absolutely. So here we go. So we'll like this, especially as one or more of us have been under Her Majesty's protection at one point or another. Powers to assent from hospitals and other clinical environments. So if you are a person who is in the system of incarceration, whether that be mental health incarceration or the prison system, people can assent, the people who care for you can assent on your behalf for you to give medical information and your DNA and everything else like that. So when you were talking about higher support needs, obviously a lot of those people will be a lot of the people in those situations incarcerated in the hospital. I was going to say the hospital system. Yeah, I'll call it the hospital system. Yeah. Also, another interesting thing was that even if you lost, so basically the first lot of ethics that did actually go through, but then it was paused. So this is the second lot. Didn't talk about hopefully I've written it somewhere. Oh, I've lost my words. But mental capacity. So like we have people have to be able to be able to say, yes, I feel like I have the information to make this choice about my information and what I want to share. And I know that I can come out of this whenever I feel like it. I don't need to be able to give any kind of reasons to that. Nothing bad will happen for me if I take away my information from the study, all of this. Now, within research, sometimes because of the anonymization process, you might, from the time you start in the study, it might be like, oh, by this certain date, you can't take your information because it will be in the pool of 10,000 people. So we won't be able to extract your information and kind of give it back to you, as it were. But my concern here was that even if you lost mental capacity, so the collection of information, including the pause, was nearly 2.5 years. Even if at the beginning of the thing you went, oh yeah, I love S10K, let's give them all my information. If you lost capacity during that time, your information would not be taken out of the study. So if you had a stroke, if you had a car accident, if you had a mental health crisis, whatever, like your information could not be extracted from the data.
I'm very much of the opinion.
That seems illegal, but I don't know. Seems illegal, but I don't know. The system.
It's definitely unethical. And I'm very much of the opinion that, you know, with something like this, if at any point you've lost the capacity to make the decision to remove the data yourself, they should just assume that they can't use that data.
Yeah.
Because that's way less unethical than just keeping hold of it.
Sorry, I should just make it clear. You have to have someone on your behalf take away your assent. I don't know what it would be at that point. So you have to have someone on your behalf do that. But then if your information is being given on your behalf anyways, so you know, if you are a person who's in a mental health institute or in the prison system, or you have higher support needs and your parents or carers are doing it for you, like, that's just another step of vulnerability for me.
And this
and also, who's like deciding what mental capacity looks like? Is there a whole thing on
There's
this?
a very troubling fascist and also fascist history of experimenting on people who are effectively incarcerated and do lack mental capacity and all of that, you know.
And that's also, you know, we're talking about, when we're talking about people who are in carcerative care, such as detained under the Mental Health Act or in a prison, we are talking invariably about people who are more likely to be multiply marginalized.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of the things that can't be lost from tonight's discussion, is that it's not just autistic people who are, you know, suffering at the hands of really, really shockingly bad ethics here. You know, this is affecting people from various racial backgrounds, various gender diversity backgrounds, like literally all the intersecting identities that you can think of with autism. They're all being impacted here, and these are where they intersect. These are people who are more likely to suffer at the hands of bad ethics already.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people in prison who there's a high prevalence of like bipolar, you know, schizophrenia, you know, there's just that, it's like, I mean, it almost feel like prison is just like another mental asylum, basically. That's what I feel like.
I want to put it in perspective for people, because I am also schizophrenic. I am right now of sound mind, and I am vehemently against giving my DNA to Spectrum 10K. If I get sectioned, the nurses can do it on my behalf.
Yeah, 100%.
Like that, that is not ethical at all.
No. You could be, if you're a bipolar, you could be in a manic phase.
Yeah.
You know, and then you return to sort of reality and you realize your data's been given away. Like,
what does this mean for systems as well? This would not have been like considered at all, because there's a lot of people with dissociative identities as well. So I don't know if I'm quite explaining this right, but more than one personality in one body, or more than one humanity in one body, if that makes sense. So like, what if one part of your system says, yeah, no, I'm happy to do that, and your other headmates are like, no, I'm not happy to do that, but they're not in charge right now.
Mm,
I would
so they go
actually
to
really
carers
love.
as well.
I would actually really love anyone who is comfortable who has lived experience of being a system, to weigh in on that, because that's a whole other ethical thing, like that hasn't been considered. Because, well, I mean, they've not considered a lot, or they have considered it and they just don't care. So I would be really interested if anyone feels they can weigh in on that, because that is a, you know, as someone who does not have lived experience of that, I couldn't even fathom an answer to that. But you know, I'm sure someone watching this either now or later might have something to say about that. And if you do, please do get in contact, because I would really love to boost, you know, what's being said there. But you know, the thing with Spectrum 10K is this isn't like a one-off occurrence, though. This is just one of the most prominent of a history of unethical practices when it comes to autism research. You know, you can trace the history of autistic experimentation back to things like the Action T4 project during the Second World War. You know, these practices have been ongoing.
Asperger's.
Yeah, you know, it's been ongoing for the better part of a century, and people are still doing it now. Like, you know, it's like history is just constantly repeating itself.
Yep.
And you know, we need to really, this is why we're asking people to boycott Spectrum 10K, because we need to actually draw a line in the sand now and say, we're not going to tolerate this. We are not going to facilitate this. You know, even if we can't stop the project, we can make it so difficult for them that other
and that's what
researchers
has to
in
be
the
done.
future will think twice about it.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing for me. It was about letting other people know, because, you know, we're I know we're an intersectional crew, as it were, but like, we still have our finger on the pulse, and we have the resources to be aware of these things. Like, but a lot of people don't have that. So for me, you know, I was telling people, whether I should have been or not, I was telling people that I work with, like, you know, and the families that I work with, because the last thing I want is for their young people's data to be given away to something that is hideous. And I don't think that any of the parents that I work with, or any of the families that I work with, would do that with the intention to harm their autistic children or any autistic people. But if you keep getting given that, what Alice was talking about earlier, about that negative idea on what autistic experience is, or what they call autism, like, at some point you're going to go, oh, this is going to help my child, then yeah, why wouldn't you sign up to it? That makes sense. Oh, they're talking about well-being and co-occurring stuff, and oh, you know, and my son has, you know, eating disorders, and you know, you can understand why people sign up for these things. And that makes it all the sadder for me, if I'm honest with you. But I think that's part of information, is, you know, we were never going to get to stop it. That was never going to happen. But the idea of being able to say to people, you know, if you're going in for this, have as much information as
And
you
this
can.
is why the most,
If that's what you really want to do, and if you look at the information, you think, oh no, I ain't going to do that.
Your
And,
pass.
you know, yeah.
this is why the most powerful tool we have in this is our voices. Because okay, let's say 1% of people listen to us. You tell 1,000 people, that's 100 less eyeballs that they're getting. Like, you know, and it doesn't sound like a lot, but the more people you tell, the bigger that 1% gets.
Definitely. Definitely. I think there was like a massive kind of exceedingly organized actually, and I laugh because I know how difficult it was to organise this tonight. Just because we're neurodivergent and most of us are chronically ill, and it's like burnout and probably not the best time of year and all of this. But Boycott Spectrum 10K was just so well organized, and with all the different areas of expertise and experience that we all had. And I think it was Tanya who did a lot of the plain language stuff. I looked at a lot of the ethics stuff. Kieran kind of brought in his understanding of like autism history and kind of using different social media, different platforms, different people we know. We all Priscilla about kind of bringing in intersectionality and the mental health side of things from you as well, David. Like, it was just super, super organized, and I feel like autistic advocacy could do with a bit more of that. And I don't know if I'm just not on the inside of something amazing that's already happening, or I'm not saying that things aren't already happening elsewhere, but like, how do we get more organized to do, so if something like this happens again, and like you say, like, this violence is happening all the time. It's not like, oh, in a couple of years time there'll be another big study. Like, these studies are happening all the time and all across the world as well. Like, how do we get ourselves organized to be able to say, okay, right, okay, we're ready to go. I know this person, we know this person. Together we can kind of.
Katie and I were actually talking about this last night, like setting up like a network of activists who, because one of the problems, for example, with getting the word out is that social media is the main way of doing it, but social media penalizes these sorts of posts. And I was saying to Katie, let's have a network of activists who all share the posts, which bumps them up the algorithm, things like that.
Have to game the system.
Have organized, orchestrated efforts to get the word out there on these things. And I know it's something that I'm quite interested in getting going, and I already have thoughts on how that can be done. And I know you do, Katie, as well. And for anyone else who might be interested, get in touch, because the more of us there are, the more powerful our voice will be.
And the more that the media can't dismiss this as just a minor fringe extremist movement.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And if these groups already exist, like, is there intergroup work? I don't know if intergroup work is quite the word I'm going for, but like, is there multi group working? I don't know. Can we join together?
Yeah, like, no, you're right. It's all about collaboration and solidarity for me. For me, it's like, I'm working in the cult awareness sphere, and it's like you have to work. It's what I'm telling the cult recovery and cult specialists is, you need to go into different communities. You need to talk to Black communities. You need to understand intersectional frameworks in order for you to be able to provide the best experience for cult survivors. And it's the same with any area. If you're only looking into your own sort of little bubble, and you're not reaching out and you're not making those connections and using those different frameworks, then you're going to miss something. You're going to miss a perspective that you wouldn't have seen yourself because of blind spots or whatever. So, like, it's just so important to have those different perspectives. And also, because like you say, autism cuts across so many different identities. So that is like the variety in autism, like the variety of communities in the autistic community itself. It's so varied, and so it's so important to have those different perspectives.
Yeah. So, if anyone takes anything from this, it's that we have power in numbers. We showed that with the Boycott Spectrum 10K campaign. We're still fighting Spectrum 10K. We probably won't stop it. That's the truth of the matter. But we can make it so difficult that other people think twice about doing this again. And, there is power in numbers. So let's do something with that. But does anyone have any sort of final thoughts before we sign off?
I have a thought about like where this funding is coming from, because I think I'm not sure. Do you know, Katie, whether is it one source of funding or is it
I think it was
multiple
the
sources.
Wellcome Trust.
Was it the Wellcome Trust?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
The Wellcome Trust, but it's through University of California.
Right.
Autism Speaks is wrapped up in there
Right.
somewhere.
Right.
I don't know off the top of my head, if I'm honest with you, but it's not one place. It's all it's a weird siphoning of money from the US to do stuff in Europe, which is very similar to the AIMS 2 trials, which is which is a podcast for another day. But yeah, is also very problematic to autistic people as well, and based in Europe, but mostly funded by the US. It's which again to me is just like, why aren't you doing this in your own country?
Yeah, no, it's just because I've been listening a bit to this guy called Derek Bardowell, who talks about having foundations and people who give out money held to extra, like having extra accountability, and how do we ensure funding foundations and funding organizations are actually themselves checking in with communities and getting a co-productive way of doing things, consulting with people with lived experience, so they're not just then giving their money to this project which doesn't benefit anyone. And because I feel like you need to get to the source almost, so that people can't even, it may not be possible in our lifetimes, but I think that's such an important area of accountability, looking at these organizations that are actually giving out the money and saying, okay, so who are your trustees? Are they all white, and are they all able-bodied people? Are they all non-autistic people or whatever? Like, what is their governance?
They're all gonna be men
there, because no one's actually, I don't think people are looking at this. They'll look at the charities, or they'll look at the groups that are doing these projects, but they won't actually look at, okay, but actually who is funding this a lot of the time, to let's actually put some pressure on them to do better and actually give money to organizations that are doing work in the communities, grassroots organizations, people working with activists. And I think that's work that really needs to be done.
Absolutely. And yeah, well, thank you to the two of you for joining me tonight. It's been a long road to get this podcast recorded, because we're trying to organize it. Originally,
how long has it actually been?
It's been about a year. We've been trying to get
it really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, the problem is there was a lot of people interested, but trying to find days when everyone's available.
Yeah, that's always a nightmare. I end up doing those doodle polls, is it?
Yeah, and by the time you've organised with one person, like the other three have forgotten the date.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's
been good. So thank you to everyone who's listened. It's been really good having you here, and we'll catch you in the next episode. I think next week I have the rescheduled episode with Fergus Murray talking about education, well-being, and monotropism. And in the meantime, autism researchers, the community is watching you. So do with that what you will. Take care, everyone, and goodbye.